Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to take our house and we're going to start the steps of getting it set up into Unreal Engine so that we can have it rendered out. And at the end, it'll look something like this. Okay, now my house has the worn textures that we created in the last video, and well, the video before last, because in the last video we actually took the house, put it back into Maya, and set up all of the textures and rendered it out in Arnold. In this particular video, what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're going to set it up so that it is inside of a game engine, and inside the game engine we can actually hit the right buttons, and that's not what I want. There we go. Helps to hit the right buttons. And once it's inside, now we can actually use it as a game prop, or we can render it out and make it part of a game scene. And just kind of run around and check it out a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go through all these processes like I said, and once we get that done, we'll also have to set up our materials yet again onto our house, and that's what this is down here along the bottom. We'll have our various materials set up so that the Quixel materials can have some more realistic look at our house here inside of Unreal Engine. One of the things that's not done yet with this scene is I have not built out the lighting yet. I just dropped it in here and added a little bit of the foliage back in. And we're going to have to do a little bit to prep this scene, like I said. So let's go ahead and get started, okay? Let me get my head out of the way. And actually, before we get started, let me just go ahead and see if there's anybody out there who wants to know how we got to this point. If you haven't been with me this whole time, then you can check out my YouTube channel right here at Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization. And the Simple House project is what we did to build the house, set up the UVs, do the texturing in Quixel Mixer, and do a few other things that we've done with it. So now here we are getting ready to put it into Unreal Engine. Okay, so there we go. Get the right thing out of the way. Okay, so if you did not do this in the last video or you didn't follow along, I'm just going to go ahead and start from the beginning here, making sure that, again, you know the steps that we're supposed to follow along with. And let me go ahead and close the rendering there from Arnold, bring this over here, and just a reminder, remember we selected our simple house, okay, and we went to File, and we exported the selection. And if you've already done this, you don't need to do this again, but I'm just revisiting it for those who did not. I'm going to hit the down button here and select FBX Export. Okay, and you can see I have a couple that have already been exported. I'm not going to export this again. I have a couple that I'm going to work with. So, but give it a name, and then make sure that over here on the right-hand side, you select Embedded Media. This is what's going to make our materials move along with our house. Now, our textures will not be actually on our house when we import it into Unreal Engine. We'll have to get that set up on our materials. But make sure you have the embedded media. That's in one of these drop-down boxes here under File Type Specification Options, Embedded Media, and then Embedded Media. And then once you do that, click on Export Selection. Make sure you know where it's going to go. Right here is going into my scenes in my project. So Maya project, Simple House, into the scenes, which is the same place where our Maya files, the .mbs, are also located. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out Maya. We don't need that open anymore. And the next thing I'm going to do is move this out of the way. And I'm going to open up Epic Games. So if you don't already have Unreal Engine installed, you need to go to unrealengine.com and download and install Unreal Engine. You can follow along with a video that I have if you don't know how to do that, and then get it installed and pick up from there. All right, so the first things we need to do is, after we have Epic Game open, it may not be in the right spot for you. Usually if it's the first time you open it, is probably going to be somewhere on the library, which is going to be basically showing you what games you have from Epic and those type of things. What you want to do is you want to select Unreal Engine right here, and there we go. So you may have something like this pop up. So you select Unreal Engine, and you want to go up here to the top where it says Library. You want to make sure you have an engine installed, okay? You hit the little plus button here to install an engine if you don't already have one installed. Again, I have a video that shows all this if this is the first time setting up Unreal Engine. For those of you with it already installed, we're going to go ahead and move on from here. We have a choice between 4.26 and 4.27. We're not going to use Early Access 5.0 for this video. So either one of these you can use. It should work just fine if you follow along with what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and use this one right here. I'm going to use 4.27.1. I believe there's also .2 is out right now, perhaps. But I'm going to go ahead and use the one I have. So you click on it and you launch it, okay? You can also, up here, if you hit the down arrow, you can select the engine version that you want, and then you can launch it from here as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause while all of this is starting up. Okay, so now we have our window opened up, and this is the spot where we're going to create our project. Now, I've been using Unreal Engine for several years. I have a bunch of projects. These are just the ones that are showing up in here. You may not have any of these little tiles in yours if this is the first time you're using it, and that's perfectly okay because we're not going to use any of these anyway. We're going to go down here and we're going to click on the one that says Games. We're going to select that one and we're going to say Next. And so that you can have a character run around and you have the controls already set up in your landscape so you can do this, we're going to go ahead and pick, I like using the third person. You can also pick a first person, which will work the same way. So I'm going to use a third person so I can see my scale of my character. And I recommend, if this is your first time and you need to scale stuff, let's go ahead and select the third person. Okay, and when you select any of these, they'll tell you a little bit about it over here in this window. I'm going to select Next. I'm going to make sure I have my starter content. So right here where it says with starter content, make sure it has the little box open. We're going to leave the rest of these at default. Okay. Down here at the bottom, it says Unreal Engine Projects. That's where this is going to go on my D drive. Make sure you put it in the appropriate spot for your files on your computer. And then let's go ahead and give it a name. And I'm going to call this one Simple House. Okay, because that's the project we've been working on. And I'm going to go ahead and create that project. And again, it's going to take a few minutes maybe, depending on the speed of your processor, to get this opened up. So I'm going to go ahead and, while that's working actually, we're going to go ahead and open Epic back up again. Okay. Hopefully your computer can do this at the same time. If not, then pause and wait until your computer has the window opened up and then bring Epic up. And okay, so what I'm going to do is here in Epic, I'm going to go back to the marketplace. Now, this is the way that you would normally do this, okay? And it looks like my Unreal Engine has finished loading, and we'll get back to this in just a second, okay? Since we already have started working on the marketplace piece, I'm going to come back and show you around here inside of the third person example map in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to minimize that. In the marketplace, the reason why I'm specifying this is the way you would normally do it is because for whatever reason, my marketplace tabs have broken, but we're going to go to the free, okay? So, and we're going to go to the permanently free collection here in inside of the marketplace. Now, fortunately, I'm not tied just to the marketplace through the browser on Epic. I can actually go to a regular web browser and go to the marketplace, and it looks pretty much the same. Then here's free. We're going to go to permanently free collection, and Once that's selected, over here on the right hand side, I'm going to go ahead and look for, let's see here. If you click in the tags box here, okay, where it says search tags, I want to find the one that says environments. And my head's kind of in the way, you may have missed that. Let me go ahead and hide myself again. All right, and again, that was right here. Clicking in the search tags, finding the one that said environments. Now that I have environments open, it's not a choice in here anymore, but you're going to find the one that says environments. You see that it pops in up here, permanent collection and environments. And there are a few different environments that are in here. We're going to find the one that actually has been around for a little while. It's on page 2 for right now. And we're going to get this one that's called Landscape Pro 2.0. Okay, and the way you're going to do that is you're going to select where it says add to cart. See, mine already, since I already have it, it says write review, and it says I've already owned it. But for you, if you haven't already gotten this one in the past, you can find it, click on the add to cart, and I'm going to demonstrate that with this, that one, yeah, we'll do it with this one right here. This is the only one I don't have that's on this page. So I'm going to go ahead and pretend that this is my Landscape Pro by selecting add to cart. Okay, it's going to go up into my cart. I'm going to click on my cart, and then I'm just going to go to checkout. Okay, and then it's going to load my order, and it's going to say thank you, and that's it. It's going to go away. Okay, so now it should be in your library. Okay, and now I'm going to minimize this and go back to my Epic and go to my library. Okay. Now in my library, I'm going to scroll down. These are some of my other projects. Let's keep scrolling down. There should be a section that says Vault. Okay. Depending on if you have any projects up here or if it's empty, the Vault may be a little bit closer to the top. The other thing with it is that inside the Vault, these are all of your assets that you have acquired through the marketplace. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. Now you see I have a few, and one of the things I do advise is if you haven't done this in the past is go to free. There's this free for the month section, and there's a bunch of other free stuff in here too. But free for the month, check back every month and find some of the free stuff that pops up, and some pretty cool stuff. And that's how you can build up your library over time. It also contains stuff that you've purchased that you're using for projects and things like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go down to the L's because that was landscape. The name of this was landscape. I passed it. There it is. Landscape Pro 2.0 AutoGen right here, okay? So right here it says add to project. I'm going to click on that button and add it to my project. And now I'm going to find my project that I created, which is called Simple House. Yours may be right there, it may have popped right up at the top. Okay, and if you notice, there's also these little numbers in the lower right hand corner. This is going to be the version that that particular project was done in. So this is my Simple House 4.27. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to add to project. Okay, now if you have a version that this is not compatible with, it'll say that, or it won't show up here at all. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add that to my project. And you can see that right here, this is beginning to build out. It's going to add, it's 3.2 gigabytes, and it's going to take a few minutes to add that in. While that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the third-person map. Now, this is the default map that will open up inside of our project every time until we change it. And I'll show you how to change that once we're ready. But first, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Unreal Engine, okay? And kind of how you move around. Over here on the left-hand side, this is everything. It's called the World Outliner, and this is everything that is available. And actually, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I have a few windows open that you probably won't see on yours, and I'm missing a few things that you would normally have, okay? So, usually the World Outliner is placed over here, and it's kind of in this section here, and your details are going to be down here. And that one window I just closed, window, and it was world settings, is right here. That'll pop up over in this spot here in the future. And we are going to, I don't think we're actually going to get into world settings, so I'll just leave that out for now. So this is typically how this window is set up, okay? And it may be something more like that, depending on the size of your screen. All right, so one of the things I like to do though is I like to bring my world outliner over here because this is a much larger area, and I'm not constantly placing actors into my scene. Once I'm done, you know, I can always flip back and forth and grab them and pull them over, but I am always trying to find things inside of my world, okay? So everything that is in place in this world is in this world outliner tab. What I like to do is I like to just grab that tab, drag it over, and put it over here, park it right next to my place actors so I have this extra large space to be able to see everything. And like I said, everything that is here is everything that is represented in this world. So if I were to click on this walkway here, that's actually this whole area. You can kind of see it's highlighted here. Let's see here, floor. So if I click on the floor, you see that it highlights and has this little gizmo that pops up. In Unreal Engine, Z or Z is up. The green one is Y, and the red one is X. Okay. In other software such as Maya, Y is up, and Z is one of the axes that is on the horizontal plane. Okay. So that is just something to note. Also, in this scene, we have a cube. We have a bunch of other parts that kind of make it up, some stairways and things like that. These are all things that you can find in this Place Actor tab here. Place Actor tab is a tab that you can drag things and put them into your world. So I put this light into this world here, and now if I go back to my world outliner, you'll see that that point light is now here. Okay, we'll go ahead and delete that. The way to kind of look around inside of Unreal Engine, the right mouse button, if you click and hold it, allows you to kind of, like you're standing in place and you can look all over the place and you don't move. You can use your left mouse button to look left and right, but if you try to look up, what happens is you actually move forward. So when you push the mouse forward, you move forward, and when you pull it back, you move backwards, okay? If you hold the left and right mouse button together, you move up and down, left and right. However you move the mouse, that's the direction. It locks you in basically, and it moves with your mouse, okay? All right, the middle mouse button, the wheel, you can use it to zoom in and out. And the keyboard keys. So WASD allow you to move, but you have to hold the right mouse button or the left mouse button down to do that. If you hold the left mouse button down, W moves you forward on the front plane, S moves you backwards, A to the right, and D, correction, A to the left, D to the right. Sorry, I don't know my left and right. Okay, so, and then Q moves you down, E moves you up, Z moves you backwards. It's actually your camera plane moving. So, and then when you let go of the mouse, it snaps you back. What I like to do though is mostly move using my right mouse button and WASD, because if you hold the right mouse button down, it's more of a fly through. So wherever you look with the W down, that is where you kind of fly through. And again, it works the same with the S, the D, and the A. Okay. Again, Q and E. E moves you up, Q moves you down. Now, in order to actually play in a scene, you have the play button up here. You can also hit the Alt-P button. And then you left mouse button click into the scene. And then once you do that, you possess the player and you can run around. And it's a WASD, spacebar to jump. And you have this little mannequin player here. Okay? The player actually has a player start point. To get out of the play mode, you can hit escape. Once you're in the play mode, so again, by either hitting the play button up here or by hitting Alt P, you can go into the play mode. Okay. And in order to jump out of the player but still be in the play mode, you can hit F8. Okay, and F8, the game is still playing, but you can now be an observer with your player locked into one place. That allows you to kind of look around and see what's happening in the scene, separate from your player. And then if you hit F8 again, you repossess the player, you left mouse button click, and you can move around. Escape, if you hit the escape button, that gets you out. You can also hit the F8 button and the stop button to get out as well. So again, you can hit the F8 button and then stop up here. Right here is the possess button. So if you don't remember if it's F8 to do it, you can hit the possess button here. You can also pause the game. All right, so those are the beginning parts. This little symbol right here, this is the player start point. And you can see that here in the World Outliner, that this is the network player start. Sometimes it's just player start. Okay. There are also a light source, which is something we'll get into a little bit more, but this is what gives us a light in our scene. You can see that is from this point here, but moving it around does not change it this way. But by rotating it, you can actually change the way the shadows face in the scene. But when you do that, you're going to break the position of the sun, because the sun is actually tied to the light source, but it is kind of a separate entity that's part of the, where is it on here? Sky sphere. So on the sky sphere, if you select the sky sphere, this one's called a sky sphere blueprint, and then over here under details, and your details may still be down in this area here, but under details, there's a spot called refresh material. If you click that, it's going to move the sun to wherever you create, to wherever the light source is. They're kind of tied together, but you have to manually move it along. Okay, I think that is the basics for the controls. Okay, we talked about place actors a little bit. Again, up here in the search, you can search for all kinds of different things that you can place into the world inside of Unreal Engine. This ribbon across the top, we kind of talked a little bit about it. Here we have our play button. Megascans is a plugin, and that is something we'll get into if we need it. Our modes we'll get into. So we'll get into some of this stuff that's along the top here, here as we move forward. Again, details. Details is the information about the specific thing that you have selected in your world, either by selecting it here in your world outliner or over here in the scene itself. And this I clicked on are stairs. It tells you what the material is that's on it. It tells you the location in the world, its rotation, its scale. The scale is in Unreal Engine units. And then it also tells you if this is something that is going to be, where you can tell the Unreal Engine if it's going to be something that's going to be static, stationary, or movable. Okay, and hovering over any of these things gives you a little bit more information about that particular item, or particular button, and what it does. Okay, all of these are the different settings that we can set up for this particular object. Collision is one of those things. Lighting, how lighting behaves with it. Whether this object can cast shadows or not. So, let's see if that'll update. If I click there, you can see that it doesn't cast shadows, and now it does. So those type of things are the things that are happening in the world. And as we get into some of this, we may talk a little bit more about some of these items over here. We'll certainly talk about location, rotation, and scale a little bit more. Down along the bottom, this is our content browser. So these are all of the assets that we have available, that we have set up to be able to place into our world, okay? And you see over here on the side, now I'm looking at it, when we haven't built our lighting, we'll get this little red thing here that says your lighting needs to be rebuilt, and it'll say preview. And that's because I changed the rotation of the sun, and in order for the lighting system to work and be updated for real-time rendering, you need to, it doesn't look bad right now as it is, but from time to time you would need to build the lighting, or you can also set it up so that your lighting source is called movable, and when you do that, you'll see that it goes away. But by making it movable, it can put more stress on your scene, and if you're trying to be under a budget, you may not want to have your light source movable. So I'll put it back to stationary for now. We'll get into more about that. Here we can see our player, and this is a camera. If we click on that camera, you can see how that camera is set up behind our player, and this is what allows the player themselves to see their character inside the scene. Okay, so again, all this down here right now, we'll talk about the structure here under the content browser. We can add and import things into it using this button here. We can also right-click in this empty part of the scene, and have access to this additional menu. Let's see here. Right now, we are in the content, which is our upper folder, and then this is the third-person. BP stands for blueprint, so third-person blueprint folders. So we're kind of down a little bit into the system. If I click on content right here, we can see that right here, this is where all of our stuff is, okay? And all right, so let's go ahead and take a look. I'm seeing here that perhaps that world I moved over that I showed you at the very beginning may not be the same world I thought it was. So that may be an issue, but we'll see what we do have available, and we'll go forward from there. So I'm seeing that it's missing. And in our content folder, this is the upper folder. These are all the things, subfolders that we have right now. Normally, it's the third person. These two folders are normally here. Your starter content is that folder that I told you to make available. Inside of it, we have different assets, this sort of little set of assets that they make available for us so that we can kind of get started. Can change out where light source works and things like that. Okay, so Mannequin is also one that is regularly available, and so is this geometry one, and we can see we have these different cubes and shapes inside of it. All right, the one that is not normally here is this STF folder. And this is our Pack 03 Landscape Pro. And so let's go ahead and talk about how to get into that. So from the content, we're going to double click on STF. We're going to go to the Pack 03. Okay, we're going to go into Maps. And we're going to go ahead and go to this one that says Open World LSP version 2. There looks like there's a test map here, LSP and a test map. We're going to try this open world one right here. And it's going to ask if I made some changes, if I want to save them. I'm going to say don't save because I moved some things around. That's why that popped up. Yours may not pop up because you may not have made any adjustments, okay? All right, so this may take a minute to open. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'll be back once it pops up. Okay, so here we are. We're back into the world, and yours may be gray and kind of have checkerboards all over it, and those checkerboards are basically missing shaders. And down in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see where it's going to say it's compiling shaders down here. And this is definitely not the world that I had at the very beginning, but that's okay. This one actually looks like it is going to work pretty well for us. I kind of had to stuff that house into a kind of a small area. So let's see what we're going to work with here. I'm going to try to go up high enough. Right now it's kind of bogging down because it's still building the shaders. It looks like there's supposed to be maybe a water source down there. And we've got kind of a valley over there. Another one over there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause while mine finishes building out its shaders. We could probably work with it right now, but since this may be new to many of you, I'm going to go ahead and pause. You may want to wait until your shaders are finished building as well. just to be able to move around. And it looks like mine is almost done building the shaders, so you may go ahead and just get started. Again, right mouse button, WASD to move around. Yeah, that is a water source. Okay, yeah, it doesn't have any post-processing underneath. And coming over here, looks like that's the player start point right there. So, with all of this done, let's go ahead and go up to File, and we're going to go ahead and save all, okay? Now, the next time we open up our project, we want to make sure that our project is going to open up to where we want it to go, right? Because that third person map is the one that is going to pop up every time we go ahead and open this up, unless we tell it to do something different. So the way to do that is we're going to go up here to Edit, okay? And then we're going to go to Project Settings. And in Project Settings, right here towards the top, fourth one down, Maps and Modes, right here. This is why it opens to that third person example map every time. So if we hit the down arrow, and we're going to go to the one that was Open World LSP version 2. Open World LSP version 2 for both of these, okay? And then that's it for getting that set up. We can go ahead and close this, okay? And now the next time we open it, it is going to come to this world every single time. All right, so let's see what we can do to find a spot for our house. Kind of set the scene up a little bit. Kind of like a more flat area. And let's see what we can actually change here. So along the top, as I said, we're going to talk about some of these buttons as we move along. Okay, right here where it says Modes, if we hit the down arrow, we can select the one that says Landscape or Foliage, Brush Editing, and Mesh Paint. Let's go ahead and pick the one that says Foliage, and when that opens up, over here on the left-hand side, it shows all of the different foliage we have, and actually there should be a lot more than that. None of those look like they've been painted in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top one. I'm going to go down to the bottom one down here, and I'm going to select that. And now they're all highlighted yellow and green. And I'm going to put a check mark in all of those. Okay. And up here along the top, because I want to clear a spot for where our house is going to go. And this may be possible. Let's go ahead and see if we can do that. I'm going to select along the top here. You notice we have all these additional buttons that appeared when we went to this mode. I'm going to pick the one that says Erase. And with my dome right here, currently it's set at 512. I'm just going to left click and nothing goes away. Okay. Now you can see that a lot of stuff, once I did select it, did pop in here. But none of this is going to go away from here. Okay. So I'm going to go back into my select mode, and I'm going to click on these. So I've got to work with. Okay. Yeah, these are all generated, so I'm going to go ahead and hit play, see what it looks like when I run around on this area. Okay. All right. So I can modify the landscape any. Alright, so it looks like I can modify the landscape. That'll work. Let's go ahead and go back to our foliage. Oh, wrong brush. Okay, so after kind of playing around with it a little bit here, because embarrassingly, this was not the world I had initially planned to open, but it is really a nice terrain rather. So what I do want to do is use it, and what I've discovered after playing around a little bit is what we need to do is we need to go into the landscape. So hit mode and go to landscape, and then along the top here are these different buttons, right? We talked about the sculpt button a little bit, and here's the paint button. So select the one that says paint, and then over here on the left hand side, it may take a minute or two for all these to pop in, but we want the one that says layer 1 no plants right here. Okay, layer 1 no plants. And what we're going to do is we're going to find a spot that we kind of looks fairly flat, and we're going to start painting into that area. And as we start painting into that area, it's going to remove the foliage from that particular area. Don't worry, we can put it back, okay? So, and we will put this in, we will end up putting this all back, and that's going to be okay. We just need a large enough area to put our house in, and then we can come back in here and we'll paint it with this layer 1 right here. Okay, so once we've got kind of a large enough area, and I'm just kind of estimating how big it needs to be, and the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure it's fairly flat. If it's not flat, we can go to sculpt, pick the flat button, and you can kind of paint it in here and kind of smooth this area out and flatten it so we have an area for our house to go into, okay? Alright, once we have that done, and you're happy with the level of flatness, you've removed enough of that area, we're ready to go ahead and pull our house into our scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up here to mode, and we're going to go to select, okay? And with that done, just making sure that this is going to be okay. Yeah, it is. All right, we're going to go ahead and get our content area ready. So down here at the bottom, where the content folder is, right? We want to be all the way at the very top, so make sure you select content. You should see folders that look something like this. You should have geometry, mannequin, starter content, this STF, etc. Here in the empty spot, we're going to right click. We're going to go to new folder. We're going to, at the top, we're going to click on that. We're going to call this one models, okay? Because we may want to put more than one model in here. It just depends on how detailed you want to be and what else you want to put in this scene. We're going to double click and open that folder up. I'm going to right click again, create another new folder, and I'm going to call this one simple house, okay? Now I'm going to double click on that folder, open it up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Explorer folders, into my Maya project. So remember, inside of Maya, so wherever you put your Maya project, your simple house, into the scenes folder, and we're going to find whatever it was that you named that house, right? This would be the same one that you used probably for the export into Quixel Mixer if you follow along with the previous scenes. If you just exported or created a new FBX, then it's probably whatever you just named there, okay? We're going to click, we're going to drag that FBX into our scene here, and there we go. I don't know why I did that, but okay. So this window will pop up. Make sure that you do not have skeletal mesh selected, okay? No skeletal mesh. We're going to scroll down to the bottom down here, and we're going to click and select import all. We're going to leave everything else default. And what should happen is this little message may pop up. Basically, it's looking for a smoothing group. I didn't set smoothing when we exported it. We go ahead and close that. But down here in the content folder, all of the parts to our house should be here, okay? All of the assets down here, okay? As well as our materials. So let's go ahead and get our house into the scene and then we'll talk about the next step to import the textures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my first part of my model, and I'm going to hold the shift button and select the last part of my model, making sure not to get anything else. So if you brought textures in or any particular materials, we don't want those, okay? And I'm going to kind of pick the middle spot here. Once I have them all selected, I'm going to click and drag and drop them all as one unit into the center here. So it's going to automatically put all of those pieces together for us, okay? And I'm going to pop it up onto the ground. It's going to be a little bit off, but we can fix that in a minute. Oh, that's the other thing right here. Along the top here, we have these controls that allow us to rotate and to snap into place, scale. So again, this would be move, rotate, and scale. These little symbols right here. And you see the little yellow things? These are snapping tools that are turned on or off. To the right of that are these numbers that tell you how much it's going to move. So right now it's set to move at 10 units, okay? Here it's set to rotate at 10 degrees, and here it's set to scale at 0.25. This is our camera speed, so how fast we can move around the scene. Right now it's set at 4. If you hit this down arrow, you can adjust it here. You can also change the scale of your speed so you can make it go really, really fast or slow, depending on how you set this. So 8's the max, and 1 is the minimum on that. So in order to get this to move the way I want it to be able to be down here on the ground, I'm going to click off the grid so that yellow goes away, and I'm just going to go ahead and push it down until I get it down on the ground. Now the house is really, really small. If I were to hit play right now, our character, basically this would be the size of our character's foot. So since I've kind of worked through with this already and put it in an Unreal Engine, this particular house that we built, the scale for mine is going to be 35. So right over here with my house selected, and let's go ahead and do one more thing before we scale it. But with the house selected and all of the pieces together, so right here you see all of these highlighted yellow are all those pieces I brought in. So what I'm going to do is with them all selected together, I'm going to hit the plus folder right here and put them in this folder. And I'm going to call this my simple house. Okay. Now Maya doesn't like, or Maya, Unreal Engine doesn't like spaces, so you need to use the underscore. Okay. For most things that we put inside of here, it's going to want that. There's a few exceptions when you're doing some other things, but for right now, just know that most of the time, just put an underscore if you want to have two separate words. You can't have a space between them. All right, with that done, I can right-click on this now upper folder. So the Simple House folder, if I right-click on it, and go to Select, I can select all descendants or immediate children. I'm going to select immediate children. And the reason why I choose immediate children is because there are some subcomponents of these components that if you don't do it this way, when you go to scale, you're going to end up breaking the model. Okay, so we don't want to do that. Just pick immediate children. Now with them all selected, over here on the right-hand side, right here where it says scale, if we click this little lock at the very end, it's going to make it so that they scale the same. And for me, my scale is 35. So I'm going to hit 35. It's going to scale up. Okay, and now my house is in my scene. I've got a little bit of grass growing through the edge there, so I'm going to move it. And I can kind of take a look around, see how it looks. And again, we can paint this grass back in. We'll do that later. Just want to make sure all of our model is set up and it's kind of where we want it to be. And I think with the lake being out there, and I may have to readjust the grass, but I'm going to rotate my house so that the back door is facing towards the lake. Something like that. Kind of fine tune it in that spot. And right now it's pretty good. Okay, so we've got our house in and we've got basically everything pretty much set up. The only thing I need to do now is let's see here. Let's go ahead and get our textures in. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get our textures in so we can get our materials set up. Okay. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to go back into my folder, into my scenes folder, because that's where the project's at. We go back up to my simple house level, and my images, my textures should be inside of my source images. And then right here under my Quixel textures, I have the ones from the initial one, and then I have the Warren textures that I created. I'm going to select those. Now I could just click and drag all this in here, but there's a problem with that. When we, first off, when we first rendered the house inside of Maya, Arnold creates these .tx folders. And Unreal Engine doesn't really know what to do with that. And also, we're not going to use these displacement folders, displacement textures either. So these EXR files or these particular displacement ones up here that I set up either. I only want the albedo, the AO, so I want the actual PNG files right here, okay? And we don't need any of the glass ones. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move this out of the way. I guess I can leave it here for a second. I'm going to move it out of the way because it will disappear when I click on it. Down here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create another new folder, okay? And this new folder is going to be called Textures, okay? And then I'm also going to right click down here. I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call this one Materials. This is going to make it so that everything's kind of nice and neat in its own place. So with that materials folder, I'm going to select all of these little spheres. These are the materials. These are little round spheres. If you recognize the names, these are the ones that we set up inside of our project. So I'm going to click and drag and drop those into the materials folder. It's going to come up with this pop-up and say, hey, do you really want to do this, or do you want to copy it? So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to say move here. Okay. Okay. Now with that done, I've got all of those selected, and I realize my head's in the way, so I'm going to go ahead and move myself out of here. And the other thing I want to do is with my textures, I'm going to go ahead and bring this back over here. I'm going to double click on the textures folder, open the textures folder up, and now I'm going to go through and I'm going to find all of the actual textures I want. So I'm just going to hold the control button down and click on all of the textures that I need. Avoiding the .tx's. And also the windows. We don't need any of the glass windows because we're going to create our own material here for the windows, okay? And so all the windows can be left alone. There's my pillars. We have quite a few of these, as you remember, because depending on the number of materials that you set up in your house. Okay, so that should be all of mine. If I miss anything, I can always come back and get it. Just remember where your folder is. Now I'm just going to click and drag and drop it down into my folder here. And everything should say okay. If I get any errors, I need to know why and go find them and fix it. And we'll get these little thumbnails that pop in here. And these should be all of our various textures for our floor, our wall, our roof, etc. Okay? Go ahead and close. Oh, I'm just going to move it out of the way, minimize it, in case I need to go back and find something that I've lost. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually build our first material, okay? Now you can hold the Alt button down, and left mouse button, right mouse button, just like in Maya, but it kind of works a little funky and kind of in reverse. So remember, you can just use the left and right mouse button together and kind of zoom around like this. Left mouse button to move forward and back, right mouse button to rotate around, okay? And WASD with the right mouse button as well. All right, so I have my textures. I have my materials set up into a separate folder here. I'm going to click on that materials folder, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a material for the roof. Now, all of these materials are going to be set up the same way. There's nothing unique about these particular materials, okay? So, again, from each one to one. Now, the glass is going to be something different, and I will go over the glass here in just a minute. But so let's go ahead and get our materials set up. The first one I'm going to do is the roof. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm going to do one, and then I'll let you all jump in and do the rest because they're all going to be set up the same way. Okay. So with that material opened up, you're going to get this little kind of pop up here. This is the material structure that we want right here. This parameter we do not want. I'm going to go ahead and click on that and say delete. Now I'm going to grab the little tab here, and this little tab allows me to kind of move it around and it shrinks it down a little bit. Okay. What I do want to do is I want to go back into my textures folder, and I want to find all of my materials for the roof. Okay. And the way we can do that is right here, search textures. We can just type in roof, and all of the ones that have to do with the roof are going to pop right in. Okay. So now I'm going to just go ahead and select all of these. I'm going to click and drag and drop them into that window. Selecting this tab again, I'm going to park this tab right next to the other tab. So now basically I can jump back and forth like this, okay? All right, so now I have all of those textures set up in here, and I'm going to get everything in place so that I can go ahead and get my materials put together here, okay? So I'm going to kind of set them up in a certain way that I want them to be set up. And sure. We may end up coming back and playing with the displacements, so let's not forget where we put those either. But initially we're just going to see if we can do this using our normal maps and our textures and texture objects. So this is my albedo. I'm going to drag this up here. It's also the color ID or color map, whatever, however is preferred to. And if I hover over it down here with it selected, you can see that this is referred to as albedo. Okay, so here is the texture sample. Over here is the details in this window, and then down here is the actual little texture fingernail or thumbnail. And then if I hover over it, it tells me what it is. Okay, so I want that one, and I also want this one that's kind of blue right here. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag it over. I'm going to put those two right there. Now these other ones, I'm going to go ahead and figure out what's what. This is my roughness, and if I take a look at this order here, my metallic is there, my roughness is there. This is my AO, which is at the bottom. If I hover over that, it says that's, oh, I'm sorry, that's metalness. Okay, so metalness, and this should be my AO then. My ambient occlusion map is right here. Okay, and I'm going to put these down kind of like this, give myself a little bit of space, because we're going to also build out some additional things up over here. All right, so now with this this one selected, I'm going to go ahead and I kind of played around with it, these maps a little bit, and we may end up doing something different with this roughness than we do with some others. It just depends on how it's going to actually load onto our material. So I guess in a way when I'm saying they're all the same, now that I'm looking at it again, that's not entirely true. So here with the metallic, I'm going to go ahead and go up and attach my metallic. I'm going to grab the R for my roughness, so the red output, and then for the ambient occlusion, I'm just going to go straight out with the RGB and ambient occlusion in there as well. Okay. When we do that, you start to see things starting to get put onto our surface area here. And this is the very top of the roof, part of the material. This right here is what's concerning me. This is the part that is the bottom part of the house, and I'm not sure why it is so shiny. So we may end up needing to do something with the roughness map. Now these two maps over here, this is where we're going to actually get our definition for our house. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and with this one selected, the albedo, I'm going to go ahead and do hover underneath it down here and hit Control W. So Control W in Unreal Engine duplicates an object, and I'm going to do the same thing with the normal map. I'm going to do Control W underneath it. Okay, so now I have 4. I have 2 of each of these. The bottom one that I just created, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to convert it to a texture object. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to right click, I'm going to convert it to a texture object. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to bring in a new node that we haven't created before. The way to do that in Unreal Engine is we right click right here, and we're going to type in detail, because this is our search function here at the top, and this detail texturing is the one I want. Okay, so detail texturing. Alright, so from the RGB, I'm going to go ahead, and this one goes into what's called diffuse, because that's another name for an albedo, is diffuse. And then this one is going to go into the detail diffuse. Okay, because that's what that is a detail object. Okay, I'm going to bring these up a little bit. We're going to do that same thing here. We're going to come out from the RGB. We're going to go into the normal there. And then we're going to go ahead and this one goes into the detail normal there. Actually put these down just a little bit so I have some space. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in some constants that are going to allow us to put in some numbers in here. Okay, a constant is just basically that. It's just a number, right? So over here in the empty area, I'm going to hold down the 1 button and left mouse button click. So hold down on your keyboard number 1 and left mouse button click, and this little node will appear. Okay, in it, over here where it says value, we're going to want to put 1. Okay, I'm going to take that down, put that here. Okay, I'm just going to set it up so it's a little cleaner. We're going to do that again. Hold down the number 1, left mouse button click. We're going to plug that in. We're going to change this to a value of 1 right here. You can just click and type in there on the keyboard. And then one more time, we're going to hold down the 1, left mouse button click, and I'm going to plug that in here. All right, so now from this node on the right hand side, oops, this one should also be 1. So I'm going to change that to number 1. Okay, now from the top here, this diffuse goes into base color, and this normal goes down here into normal. And this is what's going to give us our 3-dimensional look on our object. Okay, now this is really shiny. That's not going to look right. Okay, but let's go ahead and see what it does look like right now on our house. So if I go here and interesting, our roof should have the material on it. It's odd, it did not take that. Did I? Oh, that's because we actually have to hit apply or save. Okay, so up here at the top where it says apply or save, save applies it and it also saves it. So I usually use the save button. And then when we do that, now we should have our roof starting to look like it has something on it. But just as I was afraid of, here, very shiny surface area on my underside. Now, if yours is not shiny, if it is looks like a paint like it should be, then you're fine. Leave it alone, okay? But because mine is all shiny like this, I need to do something with it. So I'm going to go back into my roof. For my output from my roughness, I'm going to go ahead and change this, and I'm going to select my alpha output, so in this case the A, and I'm going to put this into roughness. Okay, and when I do that, the other one should disappear. I'm going to go ahead and save it, go back, and now I have a much better appearance on that. Okay, so that is basically what we're going to do for all the aspects of our, oh, okay, I don't know what I just did, but I did something bad. Okay, so again, that is basically the basics for all of our materials, okay? Now, I'm not really liking the way the displacement looks on the roof here, especially when I'm right up on top of it. So we may end up applying displacement to the end of this, but we'll go ahead and see how that looks as we get towards the end here, okay? So glass, that was the next thing we were going to talk about, okay? For the materials, go ahead and do this for all the rest of the parts of your house, for the walls, for the patio, and all of that, okay? So let's go ahead and pause. Now I'm going to pause me and go ahead and get the rest of your materials done. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do glass. Okay, so we're back, and all of the textures are now onto the materials with the exception of the glass being set up. And I think we're going to make a slight modification to the roof. Now, one thing I do want to point out, okay, your roughness should go out from the R into the roughness on all of your materials, unless you're having that shiny problem that I was having, and that was because there's something wrong with my roughness map, I believe. I'll have to go back in and take a look at that, but for now, a quick fix is just again going out of the alpha into your roughness. Okay, the other thing is you can kind of play around with your normal, so basically how much the material sticks up and gives it that kind of 3D appearance by changing the constant value here on your normal intensity. And for my walls, I bumped it up to 2. You can play around with it until you get something that you like, of course. All right, and then also on the walls. So, I'm sorry, on the roof, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and actually leave it alone, I think, for now. We may talk about that in another video, but for right now, I think that looks okay. So let's go ahead and talk about our glass. I'm going to go ahead and open up the glass material, okay, and I'm going to just select that parameter and delete it, okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to get this all set up to the way that we want it. But first, select the material here. And down here on the left-hand side under your details, under material, we need to change it to translucent because we need to be able to get this opacity opened up right here. So we're going to go ahead and select translucent right there. And then we also want to make it to have some depth. So down here, we're going to scroll down until we get to this lighting mode right here. And right now it says volumetric non-directional. We're going to click that, and we're going to select surface translucency volume. Okay, that way it gives the glass an appearance of thickness. Okay, and that should be all that we're going to change on that section right there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start getting some of the things set up here for our glass. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get another one of those constants. So hold down the 1 button, left mouse click, and we'll get a constant. And for this constant, we're going to put the number 1 in there, okay? And we're going to connect it to both the base color and to the metallic, okay? Those are going to be tied together. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get another constant. So hold down the 1, left mouse button click, and we're going to right click on it, and we're going to convert it to a parameter. Okay, and this parameter, we're going to change the name over here under General, where it says Parameter. We're going to call this Specular. Okay, and wow, looks like I totally missed out on everything else. All right, so we're going to call this Specular, and this Specular, we're going to give a value. Okay, well, let me delete that. I don't know what I did there. So select it, change it right here to Specular. I must have just hit the wrong buttons and we just went kind of crazy. So it should look like this. It should say Specular right there. And then right here on the default value, we're going to put this at 0.5. Okay? And we're going to plug this in right here to Specular. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to select it. And we're going to hit Control W. We're going to duplicate it. And we're going to change the name from Specular to Roughness. And we're going to set this at 0. The reason why we're using these as parameters is because we're going to turn this into a material instance. And once it becomes a material instance, these parameters will be something that we can adjust outside of having to come into the material itself. And you can see over here in the sphere that we're beginning to get some definite change in the way it looks. Okay. So now the next thing we want to do is we're going to create yet another duplicate of this roughness. So I'm going to hit Control W. And this one we're going to rename opacity. Make sure you change the name first before you change the parameter values. Because if you change the parameter value and it has the same name, it'll change it on your other one as well. This default value is also going to be 0.5 for right now. And we're going to plug this into opacity. This is what's going to start making it look kind of transparent. Now the last thing we want to do is we're going to make a little program down here. Just a few nodes hooked together into the refraction. Okay. So again, hold down the one, left mouse button click. We're going to get another constant, and we're going to put that as a value of 1. We're going to select the opacity. Down here, we're going to hit Control W, and we're going to change the name of this opacity to IOR. Okay. And this is going to now take on a value of 1.33. Okay. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to, well, actually a couple more things we're going to do. The next thing we need is a right click right down here, and we're going to look for a Fresnel. Okay. So, helps to spell it right. F-R-E-S-N-E-L, Fresnel. And another thing we're going to get is a lerp. So over here, we're going to go ahead and hold down the L button. So L as in Lima or like, and left mouse button click. And we're going to get this thing called a lerp. We're going to plug the 1 into the A. We're going to plug the IOR into the B. And we're going to take this Fresnel and we're going to plug that into the alpha. And then we're going to plug this into refraction. Okay. Now with all that done, we're going to go ahead and save it. Okay. And now we're going to go back into our material here. And you can see our glass is already starting to look transparent. But if you get up really close to it, it's going to have some weird effects going on in here, potentially. Actually, I may have changed those already. Okay, so one of the things about a material, okay, is that the material holds all of the basic information for the way we want it to behave. But sometimes we need to go in and we need to make changes. So what we want to do is with the window selected, with the glass selected here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to right click on it and we're going to create a material instance right up here where it says material instance. Okay, I'm going to select that. I'm just going to hit enter, and now we have basically what looks like 2 materials, but this one has a little asterisk next to it and it says instance down here. So INST stands for instance. And what we want to do is we want to select all of our windows. Okay, so if I type up here in my search window, and that didn't work out so well. Probably because, oh, there we go. I have a lot of things with windows in the name. All right, so, and there are some things that are actually frames, window frames, so those aren't going to work for us either. So it'll probably be easier just, since there aren't that many, to select them here. I'm going to select my different windows. And I'm going to replace the material that's in here right now, the M glass window, with this material instance. Okay, and I'm going to do that for all my windows. You're probably wondering why we're doing this, and I'll show you that here now. Okay, so with all of the material instances changed out, with all materials changed out from material instances, if we double click on the material instance, we can see that this material has a, it looks exactly like what's on our windows right now. And I'm going to pop this down and go back to our main window here, main viewport, so we can kind of see everything. Shrink that down. So the material instance, those parameters that we created right here, I can get a hold of it. IOR, the opacity, the roughness, and the specular. Now they are all things that we can change. So suppose we didn't want to have this to be so transparent. So I could turn this down so that becomes, actually go the other way, turn it up, so it becomes more solid. Okay, 0 is fully transparent and 1 is not transparent at all. Okay, so I could change these, and I could actually create a couple different copies of this and apply them, and then also adjust those individually. And since we have a default on it, we can always hit this little yellow arrow that pops in when we make a change. If we hit that, it goes back to whatever our default setting was. Okay. We can also give these to have more of a frosted look. So I could go up in the scale here. So 0.7, for example. And oh, that was the opposite direction. I need to go. Let's see here. Roughness should be giving us more. I guess I have to go above 1. And there we go. As we start to go rougher, it should start to kind of frost in. Excuse me. Okay. And then also we have a refraction, and if I hit play and find my house, all right, let's try a change here instead of making us run all the way across the room. We can move our player start to over here. We can also come up here to the play button, and right here it says current camera location, spawn player at current camera location. I'm going to hit play. Now my character will be here. And if we get sideways here, you can kind of see that the glass looks like it's kind of splitting apart. It's this refraction that occurs when that happens. So if I hit F8, I can come here to the IOR. We can kind of play around with this number and shrink it down until it doesn't look quite so unrealistic. Okay, there's going to be some kind of refraction in the glass. We want to make sure we keep that, but we want to be able to set it so it's more realistic. Okay, we can save that. Mark that back up there. All right, so the last thing that we might want to do is we might want to make it so that our windows actually have some sort of a reflection. Right now they do, but this is from the world reflection that has been set up. So there are some some spheres that are already exist in this scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new one, okay, and close that out there so we can actually see it. So we're going to go into our place actors. Up here we're going to type in reflection, okay, and we want this sphere reflection capture, okay. If I drag that into the scene, and I actually need to stop what I'm doing here. Okay. A bunch of errors for doing what I just did. We're going to put it at about the height of the player. And I'm going to adjust this down to about 300. And now you can see I start to get a reflection appear in the glass. You should probably put one of these, it could share at a couple different glass windows, or if you want it to be specifically reflect what would be seen if you're standing in front of the glass, you could put one of these in front of each one of the windows. And what you do is after you get them in, you're going to go here and you're going to go to build reflection captures, okay, and it will now add some realism to the glass, and the reflection should be more realistic than what is currently in some of these other ones, which right now it's only, if we rotate the camera down far enough, we can get some reflection in it. Right now we're not getting any. So each one of these would need to have a reflection capture added to it as well. But I'm not going to get into all that. Basically, we've got our house set up, and now it is in our scene. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to put this grass that we erased back into the scene. And again, we're going to go back into mode. We're going to go to our landscape. We're going to turn on, we're going to select layer number 1 right here, and my little area out here, and as I start to paint it, you can see it starts to appear back in there. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to my paint, and I'm going to, and actually that was the wrong thing I just did. I'm going to pick my paint. I got my layer here, and I'm going to change the radius on my curve. I'm going to start painting in. Start to fill that in. And you can adjust the scale or the size of your radius to fit what you want it to do. I'm getting some over onto the concrete, which is fine because it's kind of what I want. Kind of a worn down look. I think I did a little bit too much there. Control Z to undo it. You can also erase it. Scale this down a little bit more. Okay, it's kind of filled that back in. Now if we wanted to stick using the grass and shrubs that are here, I would recommend going down to a much smaller radius. Just kind of paint it in, and it may not actually get that small of a scale. Get some. So you can start to add a little bit of detail in here. The other thing you can do is we can also go into our foliage, and these different trees and rocks that are here, you could also individually select these, and based off of whatever the scale settings are down here, you may get a bunch of these out here. Turn it off. Okay. You can also start putting some of that in as well. You can turn them on or off with these little check marks. Now you kind of got the idea. Two different ways of putting foliage in here. Liking the smaller stuff better. All right, I think that's where we're going to leave it at for now. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put comments down or questions down in the comments. You can also like this video if you like what you saw. Please make sure you give me any feedback if there's some things you have questions about again. And don't forget to visit my Putting on the Fritz 3D visualization, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.